I'm Shelby Hartman, DoubleBlind's co-founder and editor-in-chief, and today I'm going to talk about how the DEA rescheduled cannabis. First, I just want to remind you that if you're enjoying these videos to please like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. I also want to tell you about the Drop-In, which is our monthly, actually weekly newsletter that DoubleBlind puts out with incredible journalism that we put so much love into. So if you're interested in the latest on politics, culture, regarding the psychedelic industry, interesting profiles on characters within the psychedelic space, or just advice on how to embark on a journey with psychedelics, that's all free. It's in our newsletter, and you can subscribe at the link in the description of this video. So what's the skinny on rescheduling cannabis? The Drug Enforcement Administration, or the DEA, recently made a historic decision to move cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act, or the CSA. For those of you who don't know, the Controlled Substances Act is the federal law that makes mushrooms, LSD, and other classic psychedelics illegal. And this decision comes more than 50 years after cannabis was first listed as a strictly prohibited drug on par with heroin and defined as a substance with no known medical value and a high potential for abuse, which is crazy for anyone who has been paying attention to any of the stories about cannabis for children with epilepsy, veterans with PTSD, and a host of other conditions. Moving cannabis to Schedule 3, as recommended by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, also carries major implications for state legal cannabis businesses. When implemented, it will mean that cannabis firms can officially take federal tax deductions they've been barred from under an Internal Revenue Service Code known as the 280E. The proposed rescheduling determination, first reported by the Associated Press, frees up research barriers currently imposed on scientists who wish to study Schedule 1 substances. And obviously, well, I don't want to say obviously, but I want to say that research into federally prohibited and historically stigmatized substances is really important for progress within the psychedelic and cannabis movements. There was a public comment period which closed on July 22nd, and the DEA is now responsible for reviewing those comments and finalizing rescheduling. Federal health officials said their review found that more than 30,000 healthcare professionals across 43 U.S. jurisdictions are authorized to recommend the medical use of marijuana for more than 6 million registered patients for at least 15 medical conditions. It continues, there exists widespread current experience with medical use of the substance by healthcare practitioners operating in accordance with implemented jurisdiction-authorized programs where medical use is recognized by entities that regulate the practice of medicine. This was said by the HHS. In terms of relative safety compared to other substances, the Federal Health Review concluded that, quote, the risks to the public health posed by marijuana are low compared to other drugs of abuse, i.e. heroin, cocaine, and benzodiazepines. Shocker. Based on an evaluation of various epidemiological, I always struggle with that word, databases for emergency department visits, hospitalizations, unintentional exposures, and most importantly, for overdose deaths. The DEA has been under significant pressure from the Biden administration, particularly Vice President Kamala Harris, to complete the review in a timely manner. And also a coalition of 21 congressional lawmakers have told the DEA to, quote, promptly remove marijuana from Schedule 1 while recognizing that the agency may be, quote, navigating internal disagreement on the issue. They said, although some at the DEA have indicated that the agency's review of an HHS scheduling recommendation often takes up to 6 months, almost 8 months have now passed since the DEA received HHS's recommendation. While we understand that the DEA may be navigating internal disagreement on this matter, it is critical that the agency swiftly correct marijuana's misguided placement in Schedule 1. Can we get a round of applause for that? That point references reporting in the Wall Street Journal that said DEA officials are, quote, at odds with the Biden administration over the scheduling review. I just want to say, in general, as someone who's reported on the DEA, as it pertains to cannabis and psychedelics, the DEA does not have a great track record of moving quickly on these issues, and it's often very, very difficult as a journalist to find out what the heck is going on and what's causing the delays. Meanwhile, the head of the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, says there's, quote, no reason for DEA to, quote, delay making a marijuana scheduling decision. HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra defended his agency's rescheduling recommendation during a Senate committee hearing and also told cannabis lobbyist Don Murphy that he should pay DEA a visit and, quote, knock on their door for answers about the timing of their decision. In general, I'll just say that at DoubleBlind, we don't typically talk about cannabis. Why is that? Is it because cannabis isn't a psychedelic? Not necessarily. A lot of people think it is a psychedelic, but it's because there are so many incredible outlets out there already, including Leafly and Marijuana Moment, who are covering cannabis policy and cannabis news in a really deep way. So we always just decided that psychedelics were going to be our lane. Well, then why are we talking about cannabis rescheduling? It's because there are implications for psychedelics as well. We're at this really interesting moment, right, where psychedelics and the laws around psychedelics are changing at the state level in some cases, but more often at the city level. But we're also slowly but surely starting to see some federal movement as well. There's been FDA research investigating the therapeutic potential of psychedelics like psilocybin since well, of course, lots in the 50s and the 60s, but during the psychedelic renaissance really picked up again in the early 2000s. So that's been happening for a long time, and the FDA has been on board with the research into the therapeutic potential of psychedelics for a long time. But we haven't necessarily seen a lot of movement in Congress and a lot of conversation among the executive branch and the president around, changing the laws around cannabis and psychedelics. We still have not seen Biden or Kamala Harris, as far as I'm aware, say anything about psychedelics, but the fact that they're talking about cannabis and they're putting it on their platform and they're putting it on their agenda and they're making it a priority is a good sign, because oftentimes if we want to understand where politicians might lie on the issue of psychedelic reform, then it's a good, a good indicator as to where they might stand or where they might stand in the future if we look at the degree to which they have taken an investment in cannabis and started pushing for a change in the laws around cannabis. Because a lot of these substances have been subject to basically the same historical and cultural stigmas which led them to be, placed into this Schedule 1 in the first place, which basically every single, researcher and doctor who has looked at the clinical trial data knows makes absolutely no sense. Anyway, we do cover psychedelic reform in a deep way and all of the resolutions that are being put forth around the changing of laws pertaining to psychedelics. We'll also keep covering the unfolding of the laws around the rescheduling of cannabis specifically at the federal level. If you're interested in all this, you can follow along in our newsletter. Again, we'll put a link to that in the description of the video. We also have tons of other videos on this YouTube channel if you're interested in learning more about how you can personally embark on a transformative journey with psychedelics. Until next time.